This program is underwritten in part by
Janelle Encarnacion Art. Carlos Furniture, a family-owned business, has been providing furniture, appliances, and household accessories since 1997. The flagship store on St. Croix and another on St. Thomas are both open for in-store shopping and are able to ship to various locations in the Caribbean.
and viewers like you. The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters.
Welcome to the Bookcase. I'm your host, Shawna Richards, a sometime writer and a longtime reader. I invite you to join me as we explore the bookcase and celebrate Virgin Islands authors and talent. Each week on the Bookcase, we'll introduce you to a local author and learn more about them and their work. A storyteller lives in each of us, and I am so excited to give our homegrown storytellers a chance to tell their story. Tonight's selection from the Bookcase is A Caribbean Man's Perspective on Race, Religion, and Capitalism in America. And I'm honored to welcome its author, Sylvanus Donaie. Sylvanus, welcome to the Bookcase. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much.
So I'd like to start with you telling our audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, I grew up here in St. Croix. I left about 30 years ago to engineering school. Became top in my profession and started teaching at a college level. And when I started teaching a lot of young folks about the electrical and refrigeration, and to see how some folks come into school from the prison system, and those who didn't come out from the prison system couldn't read and write. But they had children, they had family. What do we do? So that was my inspiration to start writing. After interviewing them and seeing where their life was about, it saddens me that I had to do something.
So you started writing as a way to encourage literacy?
Yes, I started writing because I wanted them to see the surrounding, what was happening around them. That was all in Houston. Someone who lives in the north side of Houston don't know what's going on in Houston. They don't know what's in the west side of Houston. They only stay in their little circle. So it was a way to take them out of the community and show them the different areas, and also to give them some skill in refrigeration and electrical, so that they too could support their family.
Is A Caribbean Man's Perspective your first book?
No, it's not. It's my sixth book.
It's your sixth book?
Yeah. Most of my other books were in mathematics. Coming from an engineering background, was in mathematics.
So you've written both professionally?
Professionally. I wrote a lot for Fortune 500 companies in processes, how they build their processes, the manuals, and how they optimize. In essence, how they could make, just by making little changes, they could optimize the expenses.
And make more money?
Make more money.
Okay.
Yes.
Was it a big shift for you from technical writing to creative writing?
Yes. Technical writing was more clean, keep it simple. Expository writing was more of a creative thinking, building up your vocabulary, building up your style of writing. So that came with time. Because I started, I was a publisher for a newspaper, I started a newspaper in Houston, and I had to write. So I challenged myself in that area.
Did you start publishing the newspaper before you started working with the students and writing?
And before, yes.
Okay.
Yes, before.
So that was a big leap from being a engineering technical writer to now a newspaper publisher?
Well, the newspaper was only a hobby.
Okay.
It was only a hobby. Once a month, I printed about 20,000 papers a month and delivered it all through. It was a free newspaper supported by the community.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I forced myself to learn that style.
So, as publisher, were you writing anything for that paper?
Oh, definitely. The most read stuff was my publisher's thoughts. Everybody was like, "What is he going to talk about this month?" Yeah.
So, is that what shaped your perspective on race, religion, and capitalism?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Especially when, in addition to what I saw in school, you saw a lot of Caribbean people who came to the U.S. and not understanding the system that they're going into. The kids get in trouble, and they want, oh, he was a good kid, and why this and why that, and they didn't understand why those things was happening to them. So my newspaper was a means to have them to answer those questions, to face those realities, and to understand that system, the new system that they're in.
So your book is titled A Caribbean Man's Perspective on Race, Religion, and Capitalism in America. Why was it so important to have a Caribbean man in the title as opposed to black man?
Because we in the Caribbean came in with a total different perspective than a black man in America.
How so?
Although we had a suffering, but you see in America, the system goes, they change it by a different name. We grew up in the Caribbean, whether we were Danish, colonized by Danish and so on. Once we were able to fight and become, kind of semi-independent and kind of rule our own islands. In America, they never did that. What they did was to change from slavery to sharecropping, and then they went into the prison system. So a lot of our young black men was trained to go into the prison system. So if you were probably a black man over there, you probably would more than likely, either your kids or yourself, end up in the prison system. Then I had to ask my question is why? After seeing so many, you're 50 years old, you're 40 years in the prison system. Why? So that means at 10 years old.
But did you find that was tied to education?
Yes, yes. Most of our young kids are unable to do basic mathematics and basic English. So when a young kid comes to you and put a gun in front of you, you're like, well, what's wrong with that? Is he cannot see past right here. He doesn't see, well, tomorrow I'm going to, my parents are going to be worried, my family is going to be worried, the pain and the suffering for the people who are around you. They don't see that. Just having some education would give them that background to be able to make different decisions.
So is that what inspires you to write?
Yes.
That you want?
I wanted to teach and train our young folks of the system that they're dealing with because they don't know themselves.
So how to deal with the system or how to overcome the system?
Well, I think if you're aware of it, how the system runs. For example, why are the police patrolling in your neighborhood? So I had to take some students and take them into the rich areas and say, do you see any police? Why is the police in your neighborhood? why is all this drugs in your neighborhood? Why are you selling it? And you get arrested and you have no means to even bail yourself out. So again, it's some of the remnants of poverty that the educational system in the States is based on how poor you are. If you are poor,
Right, property taxes.
yeah, you go have a poor education. If you're rich, you have a rich education because they tie the education to your property taxes. Yeah.
So, how old were you, or when did you start thinking about race and religion and the things that you address in this book?
Well,
And capitalism.
I think capitalism, I did not know it was capitalism. But I remember my grandmother in St. Lucia she grew cocoa and coffee. And she's always saying, look at this. It takes us so long to get this cocoa in a bag to sell it out, right? I'm selling it for 20 cents a pound. But it comes back to us in a can and call it Nescafe. And they're selling it to us for $5 an ounce. That mathematics just don't. So I always had this in the back of my mind, So as I experienced more, it that really came to reality.
And how did those early experiences of hearing your grandmother talk about what you now understand as capitalism, how did that inform your writing? Because this is not your first book.
No.
Has that thread been common throughout your other books?
Yeah, I wrote Pie Don't Fall from the Skies, whereby even a lot of our young black men had an expectation that stuff will come to them. They're going to have this, they're going to play in the NFL, they're going to be the best rapper. They had this and push education to the side. So I told them, these were the exception to the rules. But if you're educated, you have more of a more benefit. Your cost benefit is better if you're educated. Do not put education to the side. Become educated. Learn how to read. Learn how to do basic mathematics. Because we have kids graduating from high school who cannot do basic English and mathematics.
Absolutely. So the average person reading your book doesn't need a college degree to read your book.
No, not at all. Not at all. It's the experience that we see every day. How you go to an employer, if you're educated. If you're not educated, they tell you you're underqualified. If you're educated, they tell you you're overqualified. If you're an expert, they don't, they try to push you around and all the shenanigans that goes on just because you have some skills and put you to the side. So if you're aware of this, you could build bridges to how you go around it. Not my grandmother, but my mother always tell me that, if you can't work at the table, you need to be able to make your own stable. So if
And Shirley Chisholm said, if you don't get a seat at the table, bring your own chair.
Bring your own chair, right? Yeah. So that's my mother is not, she had a PhD in street smart.
So is that who you wrote this book for, the person with the PhD in street smarts?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I honored her with that. Yeah, she was very, very, very street smart.
So what inspired you? Were you writing this book about race and religion and capitalism at a specific time? Were there any particular events that really drove you
to
put this down in paper?
I mean, the starting of this book came out of when our former president started talking about how they would push you in the back of the car with an ambulance, and I was like, And then I wrote my first poem, Lunacy of a President. And then I was like, that was good. I put it out to all my friends, and so on. So that started out the creative juice to put stuff into writing. Plus, I had almost 8 years of writing on various topics. So it felt good to do a poem because I never did one before.
But this book is mostly poetry.
Poetry, yes, yes. I had to.
So this is your first book of poetry?
Of poetry, yes.
Okay.
I had to because I wanted to particularly look at our young black folks who were in the community, who always wanted, they could see what was going on, but they didn't analyze it. They did not know the results of why you did what you were doing. So I wanted to put it in a because they always like to rap. They wanted to be the best rapper.
Which is poetry.
Yeah. And so I had to put it in a way that they too could digest some of the lyrics and see it from a different perspective because they always saw me as a Caribbean man. and they were Americans.
So you mentioned that you have some people who read your first poem and I guess told you were on the right track. Who reads your work? Who tells you, who's part of your circle that tells you that you're doing good or you're doing bad when it comes to writing?
Well, as a publisher in the Eastern Caribbean community, I had a worldwide audience. So I had this network of people that I could be trusted and send it to them and look at. Some were, preachers, pastors, teachers. To review this book, I had people from Trinidad, London, in Toronto.
So you had pastors in your review circle.
Yeah.
What did they say when you wrote about religion?
Oh, one in particular said, I agree with that.
Okay.
They just said, I can't tell this to my audience, to my congregation. They just couldn't, because the congregation wants have a certain of what religion should be. So said, I just cannot, if you tell them that, then I won't be in the pulpit next week.
So when you write about race and religion and capitalism, who are you writing for? Who is your target audience?
Well, when I spoke to a lot of my students, you saw that at an early age, they grew up in the church. And it was like, okay, if you grew up in the church at 12, 13 years old, you end up in the prison or in the government custody. Then why? I mean, it's very, very telling, because if you grew up in
so then there seemed to be
there's some disconnect on why, what happens. Because I certainly believe the church, the preachers in the community are very powerful. Within the black community, they're very powerful. They're very respected. But then when I saw,
but you look at a lot of our churches. You look at a lot of these mega churches, and they're preaching the gospel of prosperity. They're also talking about capitalism.
Yeah, but when I saw many of them was with Donald in the White House, and he was asking, how much money do you want? I was like, this doesn't sound so. So it made me to research a little more, talking to my students. They were really my to-go to get answers for. Talking to them and find out they were at the center. They grew up in the church. And if you grew up in the church, then why do we have the worst education, the worst health care, the worst, most to go to prison, the most police brutality? Why are they in your neighborhood? So when you summarize all of this, and then you see what is the results, most of them went to the prison system. So it and they don't know that because I was trying to tell my mom, you know, I was saying, you know, you don't necessarily have to do anything to go to prison.
Not anymore, no.
Because most people, you know, you get charged and you just plea bargain, you know, and you end up in there because you have no representation.
Would you say that all of the books in A Caribbean Man's Perspective are inspired by current events?
Yes, yeah, especially how poverty is created, how our young black people end up in the prison system. So I wanted to bring awareness to those issues, and also look at where I come from the Caribbean, and to understand that, hey, we love a party, we do anything for a party, we have our carnival, we have our this. So look at us, and also there's you're looking at many Caribbean people, how they are up in the middle level echelon, and a lot of things don't happen to us. You don't see cops in our neighborhood, you know. And so I wanted to show them the Caribbean people have a different lifestyle and a different thinking. Yeah.
Is there a favorite poem or passage in your book that you can share with our audience?
All of them are good.
All of them. Well, pick one.
But I could pick one for you. Well, this one I picked out was, it'd say you ain't better than me. You would see sometimes you go to, I've been to many places, and you're trying to get a project going, and the person who's in charge of the project is looking at you, and you know, and so that's why it says you ain't better than me. You are staring at me over your wooden glasses, searching my thoughts to your silly questions. Why are you asking me about your crabby grass? Your creeping command rooted in free disillusion. My baby boss, full of no energy. Your brain work in a culturally traditional ploy. So accept your failures and learn the power of synergy. Because an empty vessel makes the most noise. And I know that. Why are you staring at me over your big shot desk, acting like a big fish ready to eat a small fish? Why are you asking me to explain your comical mess? Your process sucks in illogical path to accomplish. My head honcho, full with a sense of superiority. Your sham act under the command of the whip. So step aside and understand your role as the authority, because an orange jumpsuit always loved bandit, and I know that. So go ahead. Keep staring at me. You reap what you sow. You are mad because you fail. You believe that you are better than me. But I know how you got to the top. It was not because of your intellect, your education, or your experience that popped. So let's get this straight, Mr. Rec. You ain't better than me, and I know that.
So when I first read that poem and hearing you read it now, I have a completely different opinion. I thought it was someone who had, gone to work and is working for someone who they're probably more educated than, smarter than, and then there was that shift where you understand that you're talking about people who are in prison. The prisoner and the person who has authority over that. Okay. What motivated that poem?
Well, you would always see supervisors, very very much similar. You see most educated black men would probably more than likely have a white supervisor. And whether, you know, to my feeling, most of my experience is they couldn't fit in my shoes, but they were my boss. So that was my thinking, you know, because while they're talking, I'm like, you know, in my mind, you know, go ahead, do see what you want, but I know I'm better than you, and you can't do it without me. So,
when you started off in your career, you're an engineer, you've written technical books, books on engineering and books on math. Did you ever, way back when, envision yourself as a poet?
Never. Never. It was, like I said earlier, it was always because I saw an issue that was happening in my community with with black and brown kids, and I wanted to bring it to them in the way they would understand, and also to teach our Caribbean people who believe that you know, kind of the same lyrics that's been spread around. You know, they're lazy, they want to do this, and you know, and not understanding the system because we come from two different cultures, kind of the clash of the cultures. Yes.
So how do you balance being creative with your life? And do you have tips for aspiring writers who are also trying to figure out how they can balance work with their creative aspirations?
Well, you have to have good time management.
Okay, discipline.
Yeah, discipline. So I normally, on any given day, wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, do about 1 or 2 hours of writing or reading, and get ready to do the rest of the day. So that's that. Also, most of my creativeness comes in when I'm alone driving. I used to drive 2 hours one way to school, 2 hours to come back. So I had a recorder. When the thought comes, you know, you just record it, and you could expound on it later on because that thought comes in, and trust me, 2 hours from now, you'll never remember what it is. So that's how I balance. And as most of my work is in project meaning that you need to have good time management skills and to make a determination of what time you're going to do this. And because it then becomes a habit.
So we will look out for more work from Mr. Sylvanus Donaie. It's been a pleasure to learn more about our local talent, Sylvanus Donaie. And for more information on this book or any of the books featured on this program, visit our website at www.wtjx.org. We appreciate your support of our local authors, and we'll see you next week when we take another book from the Bookcase.
The views expressed on this program are not necessarily those of WTJX, its board, staff, or underwriters. This program was underwritten in part by
Janelle Encarnacion Art
and viewers like you.